In the wild heart of Alaska, where nature dictates unforgiving laws, an ancient pulse begins to beat. It is a blood-stained migration, a silvery whirlwind emerging from the vastness of the ocean. After the long, deadly slumber of winter, the predators awaken. Two epic journeys are about to collide. In the rivers, salmon swim against red currents, defying death on a final journey to their birthplace. At sea, herring raise the first silvery waves, attracting hunters from the sky, the surface, and the depths. They are two journeys and one ancestral calling. This is the story of a struggle for survival, where every ending is a new beginning, a land where nature has never been so grand or so unforgiving. You have just witnessed the beginning of one of the most epic journeys on the planet. If you want to immerse yourself in this journey through wild Alaska and not miss a single moment of the struggle for survival, subscribe and activate the bell. That way, the current will carry you with us on every new adventure. In the vast, cold expanses of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from the coast, an imperceptible change stirs, a silent call that resonates in millions of silvery bodies. It is the salmon, which after years adrift in the icy sea, suddenly hears an ancestral command from within. There are no maps or guides in this blue immensity, only a pure instinct that awakens, activating an internal magnetic compass and an olfactory memory so precise that it can distinguish the subtle chemical essences of its native stream through an ocean of aromas. From the waters of Canada, Russia, and Japan, they all turn in unison, driven by this unstoppable force, and begin the long and arduous journey back north to Alaska, the place where it all began. Their sole mission, burned into their being, is to return to give life, a purpose for which they have stored energy throughout their existence in the sea. Upon entering Alaskan waters, the salmon are greeted not by relatives, but by a predator that has been waiting for them from above. Gathered in Bristol Bay, where the rivers meet the sea, is the bald eagle, the emblematic bird of the United States. For these majestic birds, hunting has never been easier. They perch on icy rocks at the edge of the shallow waters, patiently waiting for each leap that breaks the surface. With a single accurate strike, a fish is snatched from the current. There are no games or mistakes, only claws as cold as steel and a fixed gaze on the target. The feast is so abundant that there is enough for everyone, even the seagulls who do not hunt but join the banquet, fighting over the scraps that nature offers. But for the salmon that managed to dodge this first threat, this is only the beginning. Their journey to the headwaters has only just begun. As the survivors move inland, they face an even greater challenge, one that comes from within. From the moment they leave the ocean, the salmon stop feeding. All the energy they have stored in their bodies is now reserved for a single final mission: to reproduce. This purpose triggers an amazing transformation. The closer they get to the springs, the more their bodies begin to change radically. Their skin takes on a dark reddish hue, their dorsal fins bristle, and in males, the lower jaw curves into a sharp hook. It is all preparation for the one mating battle they will ever fight, but the environment also turns against them. The further they venture inland, the stronger the river current becomes. They keep moving forward, accumulating scars and torn pieces of skin, exhausted after days and nights of fighting against the force of the water. And just ahead, in the narrow waterfalls of the Kvichak River, an amazing spectacle and a new predator await them. In the narrow rapids of the Kvichak River, an amazing spectacle awaits the salmon. Although they are typically solitary animals, dozens and even hundreds of grizzly bears from all over Alaska congregate here every year. They do not form herds, but line up along the riverbank like a vigilant army. A strict hierarchy is established. The largest and strongest bears occupy the ideal positions on the high rocks, right at the point where the salmon must jump to overcome the waterfall. There, they only need to wait, and with a single powerful swipe of their paws, they secure their prey. Meanwhile, the smaller and weaker bears must prowl downstream, where the river is wider and the salmon scatter easily, often forcing them to settle for scraps. This order is not always accepted peacefully. Sometimes fierce fights break out when two bears dispute a rock, a space barely large enough to stand on and catch a fish without being swept away by the waterfall. This feast is vital, as salmon are the main source of food for bears before their long hibernation. During the peak of the migration, an adult bear can catch between 30 and 40 salmon a day, but it chooses wisely. It selectively consumes only the belly and roe, the parts with the highest concentration of fat and calories. The rest of the body, head, bones, and flesh is left on the shore, becoming a feast for crows, wolves, and even otters, weaving the life of the salmon into the food web of the entire ecosystem. After days and nights of relentless struggle against the waterfalls, the salmon, exhausted with each stroke of their fins, finally reach a place considered the last stop before their final destination, Lake Iliamna. This is one of the largest and most pristine freshwater lakes in North America, a sanctuary of fresh, crystal-clear, oxygen-rich waters, ideal for a break on this life and death journey. Here, the females need time for their eggs to fully mature before the final stage of reproduction. But this serene lake is not entirely safe. A silent predator was already here before, the harbor seal. She knows the salmon will arrive. Every year is the same, and she has been waiting. At first, she tries to chase them, but it is useless. Despite their exhaustion, the salmon swim too fast to be caught. So the seal changes its strategy. It no longer chases, no longer moves. It simply remains still, clinging to the cold rocks at the bottom of the lake. With her eyes wide open, fixed on the stream of fish passing above her, she waits motionless as the school of salmon glides by, their red fins glistening in the water. She just watches, waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, a female appears, her belly bulging with eggs and swimming slower than the others. That's the target. Just a few fin strokes away, with a single accurate bite, without error or deviation, the fish disappears. There is no blood, no sound, just a silent end. Above, the stream of salmon continues to flow, unaware that death has just passed beneath them. Finally, they have reached the place where they were born, a small, cold, crystal-clear stream with a bed covered in fine stones, the same place where their life began. But before they can give way to the next generation, they must fight one last battle, this time against their own kind. The males, now bright red and with their lower jaws curved into sharp hooks, violently charge each other in the shallow waters. They collide with brutal force, tearing bodies apart, not for territory, but for the right to mate. Here there are no absolute winners, only the strongest remain standing until the end. Once a mate has been chosen, the female begins to build the nest, flapping her tail to create a small whirlpool and lay thousands of eggs on the fine gravel. The male follows her, fulfilling his only mission in life by fertilizing them. And then it all ends. The bodies, once ablaze with red, lose their color, sinking to the bottom of the stream to decompose among the cold stones and waters. But that ending is, in fact, the beginning of another life. The salmon carcasses become an invaluable nutritional resource for the ecosystem. Studies show that trees growing near these spawning grounds are taller and stronger. Shrimp, aquatic insects, birds, and bears all benefit from this final gift. It is a species that gives all its energy, returns to the place where it was born, sows life and remains there, closing a cycle as brutal as it is perfect. We have witnessed the closing of a cycle as brutal as it is perfect. The sacrifice of the salmon is the final gift that nourishes an entire ecosystem. If this incredible act of life and death has impacted you, give it a like to honor its epic journey. Subscribe and activate the bell, because in Alaska, the end of one story is only a sign that another, equally grand, is about to begin. When the pulse of salmon life seems to stop in the frozen streams, Alaska's nature does not remain inactive for long, because in this land, each journey is only the beginning of another. More than 3,000 kilometers to the south, another migration, as grand and fierce as the previous one, is about to erupt. Millions of tiny bodies swirl in unison in the depths. It is the Pacific herring. Although modest in appearance, this fish is the fundamental pillar on which the entire food chain of the cold ocean rests. Its purpose transcends its own survival. It is born not only to reproduce, but to keep the life cycle of an entire sea intact. Its journey to the shallow waters of Alaska triggers an event of such magnitude that it is capable of changing the color of the sea. No other species can simultaneously summon the three layers of predators, from the sky, the surface, and the depths, as forcefully as the herring does. Their arrival is a signal, a call to a feast that awakens the entire ecosystem and sets in motion one of the most spectacular hunts on the planet. As with salmon, as soon as the herring shoals begin to approach the Alaskan coast, familiar sights reappear. Bald eagles, the birds of prey that once silenced the skies over Bristol Bay, now gather in silence once again. This time, some do not need to fly or swoop. They simply remain on the tidal flats covered with wet seaweed, motionless as stone statues hunting. With perfect timing, food is assured. But not all predators share that patience. Further out, stellar sea lions, their stomachs empty after the cold season, dive with explosive fury. They spin and roar underwater, creating a fierce whirlpool around the shoal of herring. Each tail slap that stirs the water is a jolt that causes panic, the most dangerous state for a species that swims in schools. And while chaos reigns on the surface, what advances silently from the depths is the most persistent predator, the humpback whale. It does not attack like a desperate hunter, but organizes itself with lethal intelligence. One descends, encircling the school of fish with a net of bubbles, while another gives the signal. When the moment comes, the entire formation emerges in unison, sweeping away tens of thousands of herring in a single instant. Thanks to this perfect cooperation, each whale can swallow up to a ton of fish in a single day, a hunt so efficient that it demonstrates why herring must exist in such vast numbers to feed an entire ocean. While chaos reigns on the surface with sea lions, advancing silently from the depths is the most persistent and coordinated predator, the humpback whale. It does not attack like a hungry and desperate hunter. It organizes itself with lethal intelligence. The attack is a symphony of cooperation. One of the whales descends, encircling the dense school of fish with a curtain of bubbles that spirals upward, a perfect net that confuses and groups the herring together. Another sends out an acoustic signal, a call that coordinates the final assault. When the precise moment arrives, the entire formation of whales emerges from the depths with their jaws open, sweeping up tens of thousands of herring in a single thunderous instant. Thanks to this perfect cooperation, each whale can swallow up to a ton of fish in a single day, a hunt of breathtaking efficiency that demonstrates why herring must exist in such vast numbers to feed an entire ocean. Finally, after the chaos caused by the predators, the school of herring manages to resist. Not all survive, but enough do to sustain life. Now they have reached the place they needed, the shallow waters of the coast, a silent and pure sanctuary. Beneath the surface, vast meadows of seagrass stretch out, ready to receive the first eggs of the season. The females separate from the school and move silently toward the grass on the seabed. Gently they lay their eggs on each leaf and each stone. Immediately afterwards, the males arrive swimming en masse, leaving clouds of whitish sperm that envelop the environment, thus culminating the oldest ritual of connection with life in the ocean. It all happens in just a few hours, but it is enough to change the color of the sea. The water is tinged with a silvery, milky hue, and the rocks on the coast are covered with ivory-colored roe. A white spawning strip stretches for dozens of kilometers from Alaska to British Columbia, a visible sign that life has been sown once again. The climax of their journey is an act of collective creation that transforms the landscape. The females separate from the school and move silently toward the vast seagrass meadows. With instinctive gentleness, they deposit their eggs on every leaf and every rock, ensuring the next generation. Immediately afterwards, the males arrive swimming en masse, releasing clouds of whitish sperm that envelop the water, thus culminating the oldest rite of connection with life in the ocean. Although it all happens in just a few hours, the impact is monumental and visible. The sea is tinged with a silvery, milky hue, while the rocks along the coast are covered with ivory-colored roe. This event creates a white spawning strip that stretches for dozens of kilometers, from Alaska to British Columbia, a powerful testament that despite the losses, life has prevailed and has been sown once again. In nature, both salmon and herring have learned to deal with bears, eagles, and whales. They know how to dodge and scatter to survive. However, there is one predator against which no strategy works: humans. Unlike natural predators, humans do not stalk or wait. They simply arrive with powerful boats and nets that stretch for miles, unleashing a relentless harvest. No matter how patient the eagle or how powerful the whale, nothing can compare to the speed and scale of human fishing. The crucial question is not whether we should fish, but what will be left if all the schools are caught before they can reproduce. These species return to their places of origin not for themselves, but for the life that follows. One swims against the current to die, while the other reproduces amid a frenzy of predators. Both are tiny, but they form the foundation of life in the north. They ask for nothing and need no gratitude. They simply leave behind eggs and fertility for an entire ecosystem. When we see the eagle spread its wings, the bear cross the river, or the whale stir the waves, it is thanks to these small creatures that dared to return. They did so not for safety, but for the right moment, the right place, and the right instinct. Sometimes, greatness lies not in strength, but in perseverance to the end. And so, thanks to them, nature continues to exist. Despite all the challenges, these species return. They do not know who their parents are, nor do they get to see their young being born, and yet they return. They do so not for themselves, but to ensure the continuity of life that follows. One species of fish, the salmon, swims upstream for the sole purpose of dying. Its end, however, is actually the beginning of another life. Their bodies decompose and become an invaluable nutritional resource, making nearby trees grow taller and stronger, and feeding the entire ecosystem. Another species, the herring, reproduces amid a frenzy of predators. It is born not only to perpetuate its species, but to keep the life cycle of an entire sea intact, becoming the pillar of the food chain. Both are tiny, but they are the foundation of life in the north. They ask for nothing. They need no gratitude. They just leave eggs and fertility for an entire ecosystem. When we see the eagle spread its wings, the bear cross the river, or the whale stir the waves, it is thanks to these small creatures that dared to return. Their perseverance to the end is the reason why nature continues to exist. They are the foundation of an ecosystem that sustains eagles, bears, and whales. Their perseverance is fundamental to the existence of nature in Alaska. On their journey, these tiny creatures show that sometimes greatness lies not in strength, but in perseverance to the end. Their sacrifice and instinct are the pulse that keeps this wild corner of the world alive. A reminder that in nature, each journey is only the beginning of another. We have seen how the sacrifice of one species becomes the sustenance of an entire ecosystem. If this deep connection to nature has moved you and you want to continue exploring the most amazing stories of the wild world, now is the perfect time to like this documentary and join our channel. Your support is the instinct that drives us to keep traveling. In the Great Theater of Alaska, the curtain never quite falls. When the last salmon surrender to the riverbed and the milky waves of the coast herald the birth of new herring, the cycle begins again. They are tiny creatures, driven not by glory, but by an instinct engraved deep within their being. Their journey reminds us that the foundations of this wild world are not built on the strength of large predators, but on the unwavering perseverance of the small. The eagle in the sky, the bear in the river, and the whale in the ocean exist because of this silent sacrifice. Their perseverance is the heartbeat of Alaska, a pulse that teaches us that every ending is nothing more than the promise of a new beginning.